Happy New Year. Well, Jason, do you realize that in the area of prosperity that you've given us the opening secret? Very true. I'm not going to get into that today, but a little bit, because gratitude for life, one of the things that I've mentioned in messages past, I don't know how our memory goes today, but is the desire that I have to teach the type of things that lead us to fall in love with life itself, and specifically to fall in love with the life experience that we're having. Now, we can look at it so many different ways, can't we? The title of this message is, There Is Enough. Do you believe that? It's out there, isn't it? There is enough to supply every need of every person on the planet. Now, it doesn't mean that they're experiencing that. I can't say in every area of prosperity that in days past there was plenty of it that I wasn't receiving because I didn't understand the availability. I had a misconcept of God out there someplace remote that might be noticing me or might not. And then there were thoughts that I had, well, maybe I don't want him to notice everything about me, you know. So, but there is enough. There is enough. The universe and the invisible energy of this world is overflowing. Now, the idea is figuring out what size cup we want to bring to that which is overflowing. In other words, do we want a little bitty container to overflow or a great big container? Well, there's several things that I feel like are very important. I'm going to get into some of them, but I was thinking coming over here about the Broadway play. Let me think. Pardon? Auntie Mame. Okay, thank you. Well, I need all the help today. Anybody that wants to sort of help out, join in. But remember her saying that life is a smorgasbord, yet some poor bastard is starving. I think that was her words exactly. I hope it's all right today. I looked around, there were no children. Well, he doesn't count. He's sometimes more adult than I am, so. Okay. But this is a case. This is the case. There is plenty. Now, in this message that I'm doing, I have a son, and I think I've mentioned him quite a number of times. I don't know whether everybody knows this or not, but he has spent the last nearly 20 years, lacking 6 months, in prison. And so now he's out, and so I'm teaching him a little bit, and he's already had quite a spiritual experience. I don't think that he will ever once again try to become a great drug dealer. I don't think so. I mean, I believe that idea has finally been wiped from his mind because he has encountered all these dedicated Christians, and what he's experiencing and the people he's experienced are more of a fundamental nature than we are here. But it's really the same point. I mean, it's what he is experiencing as Jesus, as his Savior, still is good. But now he's at a place to where he has nothing. I mean, he's 57 years old and come down to zero as far as personal things. Now, he does have some things. There were things that he worked in leather shops. He's got a lot of equipment, probably $1,000 of equipment that he did leather work with and things like that. But the thing that I'm trying to talk to him about is that there is plenty, and there's not anything really wrong with starting over at 57. That there's plenty out there, and you first, and this is a point that I know I've stressed here, but I want to say it again. Much of it is the feeling that, and I might want you to say this with me, I am the person who has it all. Can you say that with me? I am the person who has it all. I had him saying that yesterday over the phone. We were talking. And to begin with, that feeling, and these are my words again, the feeling that you have everything, when you're honestly absorbing that feeling, it has an expansive nature. You keep on feeling it and you'll expand so much, you'll be trying to get rid of stuff rather than trying to bring more stuff into your life. You know what I mean? In other words, it overflows once you get a solid hold on the idea that you are that person who has it all. Now, this is the truth of you. Anything of a shortage, like the feeling, for example, of not enough. Do you realize that there is a whole spiritual world? This is like a religion. And it's called, this is the scientific name, not enoughness. That's a whole way of thinking. And I feel like that most of the world has their grasp on this, that wondering why there isn't enough. Well, here's the idea that I'm bringing forth, and I will talk about it in this message and then again, but it's opening the doors to that abundance. It's ideas and things that we do that have a lot to do with whether that just keeps pouring into our lives. And am I talking about just money, do you think? Not at all. Everybody's shaking their head like this, so I guess that is, but sometimes that's what we need. In other words, I want it to set up like my year, like I do a lot of work right at the beginning, just before the beginning of a new year, because I've outlined those things that I want to come to pass, and I've phrased them like I've made a decree. Remember reading in the book of Job? In modern translations don't use the word decree. I remember it's the King James, and this is a word from Job, that not from Job himself, but in the book of Job. When you decree a thing, it shall come to pass. It shall come to pass. So decreeing is like you are king over something and you are a person of authority in your own life, so you have the right and ability to decree a thing, and that thing will come to pass. You have that authority. You may not use that authority, but you have it. It is somewhere within you right now, working and operating that authority to decree a thing and for it to fulfill or manifest in your life. Most of us here have experienced to some degree or other that I'm talking about. I know that I started out last year and I felt like that it was time to sell the property that I had out at the country, and so I decreed, or I wrote, that a house will show up, another house, and of the kind that I do, I just sort of, Pat and I fix them up, and then sometimes resell them. I mean, always. In other words, there hasn't been any yet. Sometimes we hold them for a long time, but that's basically what we do. Well, wouldn't you know, the house showed up. The house showed up. And then we decreed about another one, and another house showed up. So the idea is that the one that fits the desire of your heart is in existence. These houses were already there. But you have to sometimes open a door to the possibilities. And these are the things I'm talking about. Because so much of this is connected to this very truth that I've given you. You are the child of God. You are the energy of God expressing as you. Now, this is the truth of you, because I think sometimes that we begin to look at the physical self and think that that's all there is here, you know, and this really isn't but just a little tiny piece of the truth of you. You can't ignore it, the physical part of you, but it's not really that eternal part that is you. And so here's the thing. The literal truth then is that you are that person who has, that's the literal truth. Okay. Now, this is where faith comes in. Because all that will transpire, for example, this year, I noticed that I saw in the bulletin about the flowers, and I think it was Janet or someone who's saying that getting the flowers was a celebration that this year, 2017, is going to be the greatest year yet. Okay, that's a decree. That was written. It wasn't written is that I really hope it comes to pass. I hope that no one makes the decrees of your life or the desires of your heart as though they're just wishes. That's not what we do. That's not what we do when we understand new thought and all the principles that go with it. We decree the thing. In other words, we make it. Okay, once again, it gets back to who we are then. Because we are the energy of God expressing individually as us, then we have that authority. This is what I'm hoping that we see. What happens is this. In the area of prosperity, the money part, the happiness part, the health part, the relationship part, it goes on and on. I could go on for many other things, but those are just 5 basic things that we look at when we think of prosperity. But all of those things rarely raise above the level we see ourselves. So much of what we're doing then is we're trying to identify the real person within us. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make sure that we're not mistaken about the person that goes out and makes a mistake during the week or has some error to worry about. All of those things we've been through. It's not really who we are. We're that expression of God. That's who we are. And that's where that decree or that idea of affirmation is coming from. It's coming from that spiritual part of who you really are. It's not I always see this body, and the older I get, the more I see that, or the less important the physical part of the world really is. It used to feel like everything, and now it feels like it's just essential to keep it going. But I know that within me that I can decree and I can make an affirmation, and the chances are so slim that it won't come true. I do things that are different than yours, I'll bet you. For example, probably no one else here would make this important, but I'm writing down again a decree that there will be no prescription medicine in my life for 1 more year. Now, that's not bad, is it? I mean, it's not anything bad, but it's like, it shouldn't be essential, but it's important to me. See, and so that's why I'm not going on what you would like and what you would like to experience. I know that I was teaching the same ideas, this is years ago, in Irving when I was the spiritual leader there in Irving. And so we had a group, and it was like a workshop, prosperity workshop. And so there were 2 ladies there, and they had agreement on one thing. They didn't want to hear about more money. They had great jobs and great prosperity. What they needed was a man. And I thought, what a downer, you know. I mean, that's already solved in my life. See, I don't have to affirm anything like that in my life. But sometimes that's what someone. It's the relationship. Now, I have every year. I want to do better with my children and with people. because if you keep affirming, for example, that everybody out there is so wonderful, there'll be something come along to contradict that. But basically, let me just tell you what happens. This has an effect on who shows up in your life. Now, if you live in fear, for example, that that you're in danger or that life is dangerous. I had someone this last week tell me that, boy, the world out there is an evil place. It was a lady and a waitress at a restaurant that, and she was happy that we were all having a good time enjoying their food there, but, that we have to walk out the door and the world is an evil place. And I can't remember how I answered her, but I tried to answer her as softly as I could to let her know that's not really a good idea. That is not a great affirmation, is what I'm saying. Don't decree that type of thing. But we have to watch how we see then, how we see the world out there, how we see our opportunity, and more than that, how we see ourselves. I hate to say this so many times, but I know I have. But the world out there isn't what it is. It's just how we see it. Because how we see it is how we begin to experience it. I think most of us have that right. That's how we got to this place. Most of the comments that I've had, I've chatted with everybody coming in, and for one thing, Paul and I agree this is going to be our greatest year. We've both said that. And now then, somebody else had written it down and celebrating it with flowers. And then someone else is just telling me that coming to this place has changed their life over the last 5 years, I believe. I can't remember the amount, but I got to listen to this wonderful story of how many blessings had poured in, and then they began to connect the good that's happening with the good they're experiencing in the prayers of people, you people, not just me. I'm just one of you. I'm one prayer. Pat's just one prayer. Okay. Everything that we need to make life work is there. But if you don't see that, part of it is in faith, isn't it? Part of it is looking out in faith. Excuse me. I'm going to move on to another thing because I do think that there's never a time when it's not essential that we see the best in ourselves and that we let go of anything in the past that is negative. That's part of what yesterday was about, but part of what we are about is being able to realize that in this truth, that whatever mistakes or whatever errors or faults or whatever there is in the physical world only have the life that we give it. It'll die if we just let it go. It's nothing. It's nothing, but with our thoughts, we can keep things alive. And sometimes we choose to keep bringing up the negative in our minds. And so what we have to do, we have to sort of, whatever that chatter that we have in our inner mind, we have to sort of let that go and let that get as part of the past. But here's another thing, and I want to spend some time. I had it in last week's. I had a note about it in last message I did, whenever that was. But I said, I'm saving this because this is a part of this one. But one of the barriers to total happiness, and I have really begun to study people. My dad was sort of a character, and I have no idea why that I chose to really love that guy. Whatever his faults or whatever troubles he got into or difficulties he created for everybody, it just never really seemed to be that important. But I had an older sister and an older brother, and they everything but hated that guy. And Do you know that the one thing I can say in life is I have really had a happy life. I've had so many good things happen and so few negatives that it's just been incredible. But I can say for both of them, and I was with both of them the moment that they left this planet, and they had it good financially. They were all right financially. But all of the other things, difficult relationships, things just didn't work out. They felt so bitter at the end of life. And do you know that do you know that if they could have just had the information that we have today, but I want to tell you, and I want to make this probably the most important thing that you're going to hear, is that if you have anything against anybody, this is not their problem. This will become, it's like, excuse me, it's like trying to carry a load of garbage through life with you. That's what that's like. Let me tell you a story from the Old Testament. And all of you know it about Joseph and his experience. I don't have to go into every detail maybe, but Joseph was the son and really the favorite son of Jacob, who had the 12 sons. All right? The brothers resented Joseph because the father favored him so much. He was daddy's favorite kid, you know. And all of these brothers then resented him. And finally one day they said, we've just had enough of this guy. And they put him in a pit. They were going to kill him. And one of them sort of intervened and said, let's don't kill him. Said, there's a band coming of Midianites coming through our land to Egypt, and let's just sell him into slavery. All right? Well, when he got to Egypt, because of his knowledge and wisdom and whatever, I think I attribute it all to being in spirit, living in spirit, because no matter what negative seems to happen, nothing can take you down as long as you're in spirit. All right, he was a member of someone's house who bought him as a slave, but he was so outstanding that he became like higher up in this until there was this incident where the wife of the person decided this handsome guy, you know, whatever the approach was or whatever, I'll skip through that, but she sort of then turned him in as though he was responsible for the incident. So he went to prison. Now he's in prison. Well, finally, he gets out, and he becomes next to Pharaoh in power. In fact, Pharaoh said, you're so good at what you're doing, I'm just going to let you take over and run things. Well, it came a day in famine times when the brothers had to come to Egypt to beg for food. All right? They didn't even recognize him at first. And later, when they did recognize him, they were in such fear. And I think I've got the scripture right here. This is his approach to now being sold into slavery, to all of the things that had happened to him. And this is his answer right here. This is Genesis 45:5. I like it even better in the Bible, the Method. But here's what it says in the a new translation. And now, he told them, the brothers, do not be distressed and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. Now, I don't care what had happened, it could still have been interpreted this way. That it was a God thing and that you really had nothing to do with it. Do you see how that makes the forgiveness so complete? No wonder he was able to rise to the top and be the outstanding person in the whole country, because he had all of these characteristics. But one of the key things that I see in his life was that he was able to forgive, and that whatever negative that had happened, he could see it was just part of a God plan that was getting him to another place. Which now, this leads us to the real thought. In life, it really isn't what happened to us in an event. It is our interpretation of the event that either lifts us up or brings us down. Do you see how that works? It's so much more important than it appears to be. It's just a passing story. But the truth that is concealed within this story can change our lives. Someone that testified against my son for years, he was so angry. And then later on, he's saying, you know, I believe that for the way I was going, taking drugs, selling drugs, he said, if I weren't here, I probably wouldn't even be alive today. And I said, that's occurred to me too, you know. So he said, all the things then that happened didn't have to do with this person. It was a God thing that got me here, that's kept me here, that has now, my whole life has changed, in that his expression was, because I found Jesus. Okay. Forgiving that person, and I brought this up, I brought this very idea up to him, and he said, it's just as though it didn't happen. It didn't happen. It was a God thing that brought me and to this moment. So now he's starting over, and my youngest daughter has a great big house, lots of bedrooms, and some remodeling to do like her dad. And of course he's going to help there, but he's got a place to live. I went over, made sure he had clothes, and whatever he needed to get started with. So he now is the person who has everything. But this also is who we are. However little, however great, that's the person that we really are, because absolutely there is enough.